So I talk a lot about propaganda, and I show you what the Russian propagandists are saying, Solyov, and that sort of thing. But here I want to show you something a little different. So the question is, how do you convert someone who is just an average, ordinary Russian, minding their business, going about their life, into someone who's willing to go into Ukraine and take the lives of Ukrainians who they don't have anything against? Okay, so I saw this article. This was in Euromaidan Press. It was first on Twitter, and then it linked to an article in Euromaidan Press. How Putin's reality twisting machine grooms Russians for 161,000 war crimes in Ukraine. And then we get into it, and there's an article in Euromaidan Press related to it, and we'll show you little bits of this as well along the way. But okay, this isn't random hate speech. It's official state policy. Like, they're trying to have this kind of an effect. So what Russia should do with Ukraine, and they should be killing the Ukrainians is the idea. In April 2022, Russia's state news agency published an article dubbed Russia's Genocide Handbook. It calls for erasing Ukrainian identity. That's denazification equals de-Ukrainianization. And again, we'll talk about what they mean by Nazi in that in just a little bit. And then banning the Ukrainian language and books. The Russians are really, really kind of on they got to be under their bonnet about the language issue. Everywhere they go, they inflict Russian on the people there. But if the Ukrainians want to speak Ukrainian, this is terrible. And so re-educating children in Russian schools. And the reason for re-educating children is that they're really not Ukrainian. This is just a political construct, and they're really Russians who are turning against Russia. And that's the way that they're going about trying to understand or helping people around them understand what's going on. And at least 25 years of occupation to create a new generation. This was April of 2022. And so I'm looking at this and I'm going, what is going on? Okay, a little bit more. So there's, at the same time, this now targets you. Before we look at how it targets you, let's look at the article itself, how Putin's reality twisting machine grooms Russians for 161,000 war crimes. Down here, Russia pours 1.4 billion into this reality distortion. Quote, "We will kill you, as many of you as we have to. We will kill 1 million or 5 million. We can exterminate all of you until you understand that you're possessed and you have to be cured," declared Pavel Gubarev, former head of the puppet Donetsk People's Republic in 2023. Yeah, nothing like taking care of your people. How about that? The psychological transformation from ordinary citizen to war crime apologist stems from a savvy propaganda ecosystem. The Kremlin's 2025 draft budget poured $1.4 billion, a 13% increase from last year, into the military. In comparison, in January 2025, Moscow harvested the same profit from its gas exports in just a month. Like, this is where they are right now. Okay, so one of the interesting thoughts here was why propagandists don't pull triggers. And we'll talk more about how this works in just a little bit. And it's the same machine that targets you. Russia's 1.4 billion propaganda budget has increased. And for intellectuals, they'll use subtle references from Dostoevsky in order to kind of give a highbrow movement to get you to go from this position to that position to just get you to agree. But for everyone else, for the general public, there's conspiracy theories about how NATO's evil expansion and fake stories about saving Russian speakers, and there's a child that was something bad happened to in the Donetsk People's Republic or what have you. Okay, so that's how they move the needle. Okay, now the other one that I want to show you is this: discover 3 words that turn ordinary Russians into Ukraine invaders. They first appear in state media and then emerge in soldiers' testimonies to justify the atrocities in Ukraine. So let's look at this. So first, Russian media teaches that Ukrainians aren't human. Now, if you can drive that point home, if you can drive that principle home, then it allows the Russians that are being groomed to go kill the Ukrainians to do that thing. Now, some time ago, I read an interesting book. It was called What It's Like to Go to War by Karl Marlantes. And there was this interesting passage in there, and I'm going to read it to you. So it's talking about how, like, we have to overcome this natural block not to kill another human being. Right now, maybe some cultures have less of an impediment to that, but at least in the United States. But this is how you do it, generally speaking, with any humans around the world. Racism and pseudo-speciation were also floating around. If you were a soldier during World War II and your own grandparents were German or Italian, or if people in your unit spoke German or Italian as a mother tongue, it was far more difficult to fall into thinking that the enemy were as animals deserving of slaughter. If they stood up to surrender, you were a little more likely to see them as humans wanting to quit, just as you would want to quit under similar circumstances. But if someone is of a different color and a vastly different culture, as was the case with the Japanese, it gets a lot easier to pseudo-speciate, and both sides did. On the Japanese side, this was exacerbated by a government policy of isolationism from foreign influences for years, right? If you're Japanese and you come to America, you can become an American very quickly, get your citizenship, become an American, fine. One of my best friends growing up was from Taiwan. His name is Ming, right? I never thought of him as anything but American. That's the way it works here, but doesn't work in reverse. Like, I can't go to Japan. I'm gaijin. I don't fit in. Okay. On the American side, this was furthered by a government policy that directed second or third generation Japanese Americans away from fighting in the Pacific, making it even easier to dehumanize the Japanese, since no one on our side looked like them. Worse, the U.S. government officially condoned racism by sending innocent Japanese Americans to concentration camps, those were internment camps, making the Jap scapegoat USDA approved. It also happened in Vietnam and in all wars. Most Americans were big and black, or big and white, compared with most Vietnamese, who were small and sort of brownish. The Americans had very few small brownish people on their side. Okay, but so the issue here I want to point out is Jap. So if you call them a Jap, then they're not human. If you call them a Kraut, the Germans, they're not human. If you call the Vietnamese gooks or whatever. Okay, so it's the same kind of thing. It's this process of dehumanization that happens everywhere. And okay, so why this goes back to the article now. While propagandists don't pull triggers, they craft reality that makes others do so. Kremlin forges a reality in which invaders become liberators, aggression equals fighting Nazis, right? Those are the bad guys, the Japs, the Krauts, the Nazis, right? Civilian murderers continue grandfather's World War II legacy. Now back to this. Okay, so again, the three words are Ukrainians aren't human. These aren't humans. They're animals, ghouls, the undead. And this is a quote. This is what Russians are hearing. And so when they're hearing this, it's just like the Japs, the Krauts, the whatever. Okay, let's go back and look at this too. This is another slide. Once dehumanized, killing becomes easy. Ukraine needs to be etched off the map. We need to wipe them from the earth. Okay, this is a Roman soldier in an intercepted call to his mom. He's telling them what the propaganda has told him. Here's another one. Next, Russian media redefines Nazis, and this is a really interesting thing. They redefine Nazis to mean any Ukrainian identity. So there are Nazis in Kyiv. Well, yeah, they're Ukrainians in Kyiv is what they're saying, but any Ukrainian identity, because Ukrainian identity is opposed to Russian identity, and we're not Russians, we're Ukrainians, and therefore they're traitors to Russia, but they're using that term. It's like if you say that someone is a racist because they don't believe the way that you believe about how to handle racism, that doesn't mean that they're a racist or that they're a white supremacist. It's the same kind of thing where you're taking one word and changing it into something else. And her response, no, you're killing fascists. Keep up your fighting spirit. So the mother has also drunk the Kool-Aid. The mother has also digested this propaganda. Okay, last slide here and we'll be done. Finally, Ukrainians are framed as betrayers of the Brotherhood. That's what I mean when I say that the Russians frame them as really Russians who have this political construct that's called being Ukrainian, but it's not real. It's fake. And so they're really traitors against Russians. They're Russians who are traitors against Russians. And they were once brotherly nations, but Ukraine betrayed Russia. And in Russia's view, this deserves punishment. And this is according to an information warfare expert who explains the Russian imperial reasoning. So this is how Russians are able to be groomed to go to Ukraine and kill Ukrainians that never did anything to them. Okay, tell me what you think about this. I think there's something really powerful here in understanding what's happening in Ukraine. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, the coffees. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.